one approach is to try to use the capacities like artificial intelligence, developing the predictive patterns for demand at various levels, like feeder level or utility level or state level or national level, and also integrating a large number of storage technologies for smoothening the demand. And also one is looking at the nuclear power as a base load, which can take care of round the clock power generation, and hydro storage, pump hydro storage, which has a fast response time compared to other plants. So there are different strategies are being promoted.
Yeah, so basically to ensure grid stability, essentially it will require intervention from both sides. You will need intervention from the supply side as well as from the demand side. From the supply side, I think what's very important is, let's be realistic. Over the next 5 to 10 years, definitely thermal is going to be a part of the story. I mean, 10 years, thermal, including both gas as well as coal, will remain part of the total energy mix. So the thing is, from the supply side, we know both of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. While at the current prices, PS minimum, and I'm talking from the day the execution becomes for pump storage to become reality. So from the intervention from the grid side, you basically have to use both battery and pump storage. You have to ramp it up as fast as you can.
Grid is too big. It's like when we say grid stability to be ensured, in terms of grid stability, renewable energy is still not into such sizes whereby it can affect the grid. When we talk of grid being affected, the capacity sizes should be like at one place you should be at least 100 megawatt, and you should be connected there, and that is where you can affect it. Yes, one of the things that is seen over last 1 or 2 years, what we have started seeing, we remain grid connected, and what is seen now is when the solar generation peaks, so the frequency will increase. What happens is, assuming that solar generation peak, because thermal needs to ramp down. So thermal will ramp down. It takes some time for thermal. So as a process for grid stability, was what Power Grid has made as scheduling of power is done such that it will bring down the power generation as per schedule ahead of solar generation picking up. So on some days at the same place, you may find higher frequency, and at the same place, you may find a lower frequency. In order to get a better grid stability, there'll have to be smarter controls that will have to get in.
No, definitely money is required. For example, when we're talking about to mitigate the risk of intermittence, it means that you need to store electricity. Storage could be in the form of, let's say, battery storage or green hydrogen. Or Mr. Shirish was also talking about improving the efficiency also by using machine learning also to understand the demand at different point of time. But we need to understand that certain technologies are not really commercially viable. That's where the problem arises. It may be battery storage or so, it could be green hydrogen, or I think that it will happen in the transmission sector after a few years, once we have a significant amount of a lot of renewable energy asset in the energy mix. So it means that we need some concessional capital, at least in the initial years, for battery storage and green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is not only important for the grid stability, for the energy storage. It will have applications in many other industries as well. So it means that you need concessional capital, you need passenger capital for a long period of time. Private investors who can stay in the investment for a long time till it is fully commercially viable, and can attract mainstream financiers, including commercial banks or institutional investors. And for example, at the same time, you also need.
if you look at the financing of renewable energy sector, typically it is through institutional finance in the beginning when the project is under construction, and once the project is up and running, then the the private player investors or debt financing by the international community is coming in picture. And also there are companies which are raising green bonds for supporting renewable energy projects. There is a lot of financing coming from pension funds or long-term funds, which are not looking for immediate returns, but a long-term return horizon, like Norwegian pension funds and others. I think more than this, Mr.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shirish, for referring me. Okay, so definitely green bonds. I mean, there is too much of, I will say, glamourism attached to green bonds, but the sheen of green bonds is gone. Because if you see from the perspective of issuer, why an issuer will issue a green bond? Because the issuer is spending additional money on transaction cost, including certification, due diligence, and other things. And the green premium is gone in the international market. The only thing left is that, okay, you can do a lot of PR exercise if you issue green bonds. Okay. Even in green bond issuance is increasing, but at the same point of time, if you see that the growth rate issuance of green bonds, in fact, has decreased in the last 12 months or so, 12 to 24 months. It means that the issuer who is issuing green bonds, since they are not seeing any premium of green bonds, that's not possible. But as Mr. Shirish said, we need a massive amount of international capital, particularly the kind of investors who are definitely looking for return, but at the same time, they want to protect themselves from transition risk, like climate-related transition risk. That's the reason they look for a long-term investment perspective. Okay, if in that case, through issuance of green bonds, because there are some green features attached to green bonds, there is a possibility that they can reduce the transition cost. So that's the only benefit of issuing of green bonds. But the question is that the benefit emanated from issuance of green bonds, is it more than the cost? So that's a big question mark. But at the same time, there are other kinds of securities which have been discussed recently, actually, a couple of days back by SEBI. They are thinking to come out like sustainability-linked bonds or so, and also securitizing green bonds as well. So there will be new guidelines which will be really helpful.
Whatever investment on renewables or whatever investment on this is concerned, it is all dependent on as to how much of CO2 reduction you are able to achieve. So one of the trading methods was that was in practice, or rather is still in practice, is the CO2 emission reduction. So that is one thing against which you attract a lot of investment. Another one is when you go for investment indifferently, for such investments internationally, currently there is a lot of impetus on hydrogen. If you say hydrogen, yes, there is a lot of premium, lot of money that is available, even if you sell hydrogen as a fuel. Although when we say high use of hydrogen as fuel, it is something which is like with lowest yield. In terms of money, commercially, hydrogen gives lowest yield when used as fuel. It may be giving good yield as energy, but yield as money from hydrogen is much more when it is added to produce something, some product that is getting out of that hydrogen. So that is giving almost 3 to 4 times the value that is currently received from other means.
Different. There is a lot of collaboration that happens when it comes to financing. Of course, we are an emerging economy which is growing at a very good growth rate. And perhaps our power demand is growing at an equal rate as our growth rate. And given the impetus to move away from fossil fuels to renewable power, there is plan that is put in place for reaching, let's say, the 500 gigawatts that we're talking about by 2030, and also further within the 1700 odd terawatt hours that we consume today, like the other panelists were talking about, while there is a lot of capacity of renewables that is there in the country, but in terms of, let's say, the contribution in terms of units, it's still largely maybe in the ratio of 30-70. Renewables has still not got the lion's share. To move it to lion's share is perhaps the first immediate target, or that means over 50% with renewables. There is a lack of clarity on who would be the regulating body for it, whether it would be SEBI or CERC. The immediate ones to look at would be, how do we facilitate energy trading more in the Indian market? How do we actually bring in the interstate transmission network, which is getting built all across the country, to transmit power effectively from, let's say, Rajasthan to West Bengal or Assam, right?
So, you're right. In the rural area, particularly, in the farming sector, there's a huge scope for decentralized generation. Now, what will happen? See, let's look at how, the grid management has happened in the past. If you recall, during the past, years, most of the irrigation used to come from during the night time, during the off-peak hours, because obviously, we are completely thermal dominated. We had round-the-clock power generation from thermal, and there were certain hours where the demand had fallen. So the logical step then was to basically, shift the entire irrigation demand, which is about, that as high as about 20% in the past, in the irrigation system. Now we are going to have a very different problem. As solar, we keep adding solar more and more. That whole generation pattern is going to change, and we are going to have a huge amount of surplus during the solar hours. So logical step, in fact, then is to have decentralized solar generation. In fact, it's possible that we may even have a large amount of, solar generation, which is not even connected to the grid. I mean, you could have local grids, micro grids, which will meet most of the demand for, let's say, small rural industry, as well as irrigation, using, during the, solar hours, using solar power generation. It will also, cut down transmission losses. Everything that is basically will be generated, will be consumed in the local area. So in a way, that's a very logical step forward into the decentralized generation. Is a very logical step to meet our requirement. In fact, in the long run, we must even start thinking in terms of more, DC solar pumps, which are much more efficient, and that could become a very big part of the decentralized generation, along with other things like biomass based power, biogas, and other things. So we need to look at Suryodaya and CBG program in a way for meeting our decentralized location, the rural levels.
Thanks. See, decentralized power generation is being promoted through PM Kusum scheme, particularly for agriculture electrification of irrigation pumps, it has mentioned by Sabyasachi, and also a small up to 2 megawatt capacity solar power plants, which can be connected to the irrigation to the rural feeder, so that generation is close to the rural consumption, and that can help in also stabilizing the power supply quality in rural areas. As you mentioned correctly, there are state governments which have taken initiative in developing special feeder system, which is agriculture feeder system, where all the agriculture load, right, rural pump sets, irrigation pump sets, and if there are any agriculture based industries like food processing, etc., or cold storages which are connected to the agriculture feeder, where the power is supplied through solar power plants throughout the day. So that also helps in agriculture economy. We are also looking at the development of solar agri-photovoltaics, where agriculture land can be used for photovoltaic and agriculture production simultaneously. And this initiative is being talked about, and there are few demonstration plants which are planned by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy, and these will be there will be a simultaneous production of agriculture produce and also of electricity using solar photovoltaic power plants. And there are different issues associated with this. I will not get into details of it, but apart from photovoltaics, as I mentioned, the CBG, compressed biogas from agriculture waste is also one of the source one is looking at for power generation in rural areas. And the government, there are initiatives, particularly from say Tata Power and others, which have developed the microgrid concept in rural areas. Power is generated in the local capacity and used locally, and different aspects are and different development strategies are being implemented within the regulatory framework, and the regulatory framework is also getting developed to adopt these new concepts.